In light of a time of fake news, conspiracy theories, and misinformation to diminish positive movements, I felt it imperative to do a show that talks about a movement that was halted under very similar circumstances that had the potential to change communities and to heal and progress a divided nation. So please take the time, like, subscribe, share, and enjoy the show. Welcome back to Coco Wednesdays. I am Coco Kinsey. I am so excited to present these episodes with you. It is one of a two-part series I'm doing. The next will be next week on next week's episode of Coco Wednesdays. I am going to be debunking and kind of breaking down the misconceptions of the Black Panther Party. This is definitely inspired by the new film Judas and the Black Messiah. If you have not seen it or checked it out, I highly recommend you go take a look at it. I always get excited when the next generation gets inspired and gets interested in going back to look at history. So I definitely hope that this film plants the seed to have the next generation or those who are not familiar to go and find more information. So I hope I can present some information in a concise video to plant the seeds, and I'll definitely help you and give you some links to go check out further information to explore. So let's get into it. To better understand the Black Panther Party, we have to know some of the influences of the creators of the party themselves. Let's start with Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was a big influence on all of the creators of the party that feel as though they appreciated the work he was doing in the community, but eventually there would come reason for pause, they believed, because they felt as though they could no longer accept the nonviolent aspect of his message because there was just too much police brutality happening to Black people with no repercussions for their actions. And this in particularly would be with Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown, who were a part of the nonviolent student movement at the time. They would later go on to join in 1966 Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seals, who had created the Black Panther Self-Defense Party. Well, a huge influence of Huey P. Newton, and probably the biggest influence for him, would be Robert F. Williams. Robert F. Williams was a part of a NAACP North Carolina chapter. In 1962, he wrote a book called Negroes with Guns. This book would basically push that blacks don't have to accept nonviolence as the way anymore. It's too much happening, too much violence happening at the hands of whites, that this is no longer going to be tolerated, or we're going to be armed and ready to defend if necessary. This also feeds into the next influence of the entire party itself as a whole, Malcolm X. Malcolm X, and which would be the obvious influence of By Any Means Necessary, but I think it's also so key to note that if not even bigger than the By Any Means Necessary aspect, the biggest influence would also be of the fact that Malcolm X was willing to work with any group as long as the messages aligned. That was really, really important to the Black Panther Party. And I think that's so key to note, because often the Black Panther Party is portrayed as almost as a counterpart to the Ku Klux Klan. And that could not be farther from the truth, because they were not a hate group or a group that hated other races. It's just this: I do not want to have these kind of things happening in my community. I want betterment for my community, which goes into how they formulated a plan to better their community. Well, one of the things that they began to do was they decided that they were going to police the police. Now, a part of this would be Huey P. Newton made sure that it was legal to carry, and found out that it was, and just make sure that they had the paperwork to show that it was, in case they came into contact with anybody who said otherwise, perhaps because they were black men toting guns. So they decided that they were going to police the police, and they would stand at a safe distance, and they would go look for police stops and monitor at a certain distance and sit with their weapons and let them know, kind of by nods or by moving back and forth, that they were on watch and on standby should anything happen. Also, they decided that they would wear all black, and from the black tams to the black leather, black gloves. This was as a representation. It was a protest to the establishment that I do not and I will not look a certain way to garnish your respect or to make you feel comfortable, which obviously didn't matter anyway. If you look at the historical notes of the time, people were dying regardless of what you looked like or how you portrayed yourself. Malcolm died just as much as Martin died, and it speaks volumes. So we go from that to, they developed a 10-point program, and I want to make sure to highlight the 10-point program, because I feel like it takes it to another level of understanding them beyond just the guns. Their 10-point plan said, we want freedom, we want power to determine the destiny of our black and oppressed communities. We want full employment for our people. We want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our black and oppressed communities. We want decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings. We want decent education for our people that expose the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. We want an immediate end to police brutality and murders of black people, other people of color, all oppressed people inside the United States. We want an immediate end to all wars of aggression. We want freedom for black and oppressed people now held in U.S. federal, state, county, city, and military prisons and jail. We want trials by a jury or of our peers for all persons charged with so-called crimes under the laws of this country. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, peace, and people's community control of modern technology. Now, while some of this, I can't say that much of it seems extreme, but it just goes to show you that they were not trying to be a threat of anybody. They simply wanted justice for the oppressed. More than anything, often it is portrayed as though they were racist. And more than anything, they were showing, and the 10-point program shows that it was more than race, it had to do with class. They did not want an elitist society. They rejected capitalism, and were pretty much avowed Marxists and supported socialism, but were also willing to make the change happen themselves. This is what I also think is awesome and has to be noted equally as much as the self-defense aspect. They put together their money. They all came together as they were growing, and the members took their money and they rented a warehouse where they began to feed kids a breakfast in the morning. And this came from the idea that kids that were not given meals in the morning or didn't have access to meals were fatigued and not as attentive in class. So how can we help the community and help the next generation by making sure that they are ready to start the day and that they have everything that they need to soak up the knowledge so they can be better. So we have that, and then they didn't stop there, because they began that by going to different grocery stores and just simply asking. And what's remarkable about this, these are 19-year-olds, 20, 21-year-olds going in asking simply, will you donate? Will you donate to our cause? And people were willing to donate. So that's where the free breakfast program began, which would later go on to feed sometimes 20,000 people a day. I want to say a day because I want to make sure I get my facts straight. So forgive me, and I'm not PBS, but I do want to make sure that 20,000 meals a week. 20,000 meals a week. And they also went on to do screenings. They worked together and partnered with medical staff to give cancer screenings, sickle cell anemia screenings, to better their communities. And even more as time went on, as the group continuously progressed, they eventually would come up with their own schools called community schools or liberation schools, where they would do yoga, they would do poetry, reading, and ensuring that the true history was told from all aspects, and especially for Black people or people of color. And this included yoga. Maya Angelou came out and spoke. James Baldwin came out to the school and spoke. Rosa Parks. They really made it their business to better their community. And I think that has to be noted. It has to be noted because it makes a huge difference in the perception of how people view the party itself. They would later grow. Also, I must note, because I'm sorry, I just want to make sure, because when I'm giving information, I want to make sure that I'm feeding it to you correctly and factually. But later on, women became the majority of the party. And it's not to say that sexism was still not an issue, because we still got a long way to go with it. But women were able to be leaders in the party. They had a voice, and eventually, as it was brought up sometimes, issues of misogyny or sexism, they tried to change the roles where they would have the men prep the food in the mornings for the kids, and the women would be the ones with the guns. So they really did try to push a different narrative to try to continuously build and grow a better community and better communities just around. And eventually they would start to team up with other groups, even going as far as to have an international presence. from, Japan, Cuba, Algeria, France, Germany, Zimbabwe, Uruguay, South Africa, Sweden, Vietnam, Korea, and eventually would be in 48 states. This speaks volumes, but what this also says is the beginning of the real threat. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. Because the guns weren't the threat. The violence, that wasn't the real threat. The unification is where the real threat begins. So join me next week where we're going to dive into that. And we will get a little bit into Fred Hampton then. So again, if you haven't checked out Judas and the Black Messiah, check that out. It's worth a look. I will leave the links below of some awesome documentaries, books that I think you should check out if you have little ones or a little older, if you're just exploring for yourself. And check me back next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share, comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. I look forward to hearing from you. Many peace, blessings as always. And I'll chat with you later.
Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing.